Welcome. All right, in this video, we're going to talk about a free ADU finance guide created by the Casita Coalition. I'll post links to the guide and a list of lenders in the description below the video. The description below will also have timestamps so you can skip around to different sections, but we're actually filming this live. So what we're going to cover today is this ADU finance guide that has been released by the Casita Coalition. It's got best practices. It has a good intro for people who only have a couple minutes and want to kind of get the majority of the information, know where to start. It's got detailed descriptions of different lending products with the pros and cons, like who should use it, who wants to be cautious about that kind of lending product. And it's really good. I contributed to it, so I'm a bit biased, but I think it's a good document. When we were contributing, the Casita Coalition asked us to write for novices. So if you're pretty knowledgeable about lending products, you might think this is a little basic, Ryan. And that's because if you're like most homeowners and you've only ever explored one or two loan types, then this is probably going to be very illuminating. And we wanted to keep it, we wanted to use simple language and keep it readable and understandable. All right. If you're like, this is great, but it's all theoretical, I want a loan, then there's a good spreadsheet for you that's maintained by a lot of different people in the ADU community with a lot of different lending programs that are specific to ADUs. And I'll put some references in at the end of this stream for some specific people you could talk to in the Bay Area. But you want to, that might get out of date. So you kind of want to use the links in the description below and talk about your options. Now, what this doesn't cover, this is not financial advice. I'm not a licensed lender. I'm a guy who owes a lot of money to a lender for my own little piece of Californian heaven. If you want to get down to the nuts and bolts for your case, it's hard to do that theoretically. So once you learn the theory of different variables and lending products, you can start shopping around with specialized lenders and you use the specific information about your project, you know? So that's a good segue to talk about, what is unique about your project, right? So this is already an excerpt from the first page of the Casita Coalition handout, and it kind of goes through, like, keep in mind, your location, your credit score, your income, your existing debt, your existing home equity, and the amount of value you're creating with the ADU, all of those are unique to you, right? And so it's going to be very hard to talk theoretically about your loan and what lending options you have. Eventually, you're going to want to find out these variables and buckle down and talk to some specialized lenders. I think another cool thing is it's got a good where to start section. So there's like over a dozen financial products listed in this, and some of them are pretty esoteric, and then others are really common. And so you can use this table to kind of hone in on where to start. And they've split it out into high income and low income, or high equity and low equity. And you can kind of find where you are on that grid, and that'll help you figure out which lending products are the best place to start. So for example, I should make my face smaller so you can read these slides. For example, if you're high income and you've got a lot of equity in the house, then you're going to be pretty good, right? You've got the best, lowest interest options available to you: cash out refi, HELOC, a second mortgage. And the handout goes into more detail about what exactly is the difference between a HELOC and a second mortgage, because they have a lot of overlap. If you're low income, high equity, then there's ways to access that equity in your house, right? If you're high income, low equity, then there's some options for you that might involve like a 2-loan process, right? A construction loan and then a takeout loan at the end, or borrowing against your 401k. And then if you're low income and low equity, well, that's a very difficult place where a lot of people find themselves, and it goes through the options. And yeah, that's a cool feature of this awareness of this handout. I see people posting questions in the chat. I will get to your questions toward the end of the video, and thank you for popping them in there. I think it'll only be a 5 or 10 minute one. It's a pretty short one, so patience, please. All right. So what's included in this document is, here's a list of all the different loan types. So if you see something there that you're not familiar with and you want to learn more, there's a detailed full-page description of each of these in the handout. link in the description below. I got to write, I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but I did write the reverse mortgage section, so I thought I'd speak a bit to it. It's also one of the less conventional, more not confrontational, it spurs a lot of debate. It's controversial as a loan type, and I think it's worth talking about, because it can be pretty confusing. So it's a good example of the detail we dive into in the handout. Reverse mortgages, they're different than forward mortgages, because in forward mortgages, people tend to pay off their debt as they move forward over time. In a reverse mortgage, you're actually entering more debt over time as you don't pay the loan back. And there's some very specific situations where that's advantageous, but there's a lot of situations where they're easy to get into, and then you find yourself in a place you don't want to be in. Namely, these loans are usually paid off after you pass away, and they're usually paid off by selling the house. So if you want to pass your house on to an heir, this is generally speaking not the right loan type for you. If you want to move out of your house ever, or have the option to move, this might not be the best loan package for you, because it could put very significant limits, or it could force you to sell if you move. There's a lot of situations where reverse mortgages are not the right loan product. And unfortunately, a lot of unscrupulous actors have used them to scam people, especially the elderly. And so there's just a lot of caution required when you're approaching this subject. Now, that said, the idea of a loan where you don't need an income, and the idea of a loan where you get to benefit from all that equity today without having to pay it off during your lifetime, that can be very appealing. So it's in specific situations, people do want to investigate it. Anyway, I'm not advocating for reverse mortgages. I kind of got stuck with this entry because I think nobody likes writing about them. And I think, like all of the loan types in this little guidebook, you want to download the guidebook, do your research, and then speak to a professional about what's appropriate given your goals. All right, like I said, if you're thinking that's all theoretical and you want to know how do I actually get a loan, there's a link in the description below with a lot of different lenders. I think too, Lindsay Moon helped write this guidebook, and she's a broker, so that's an interesting person to speak to. Lenders up in the North Bay, where I'm located, include Redwood. Oh, I've got those emails reversed, my mistake on the slide, but include Umpqua Bank and Redwood Credit Union, and there are contacts for each of those, although I've got them flipped around, my bad. And you should contact a lender or a broker that you have a relationship with if you have one, because that's always going to be the best deal. All right, there's some links in the description below, but I won't put those up because they're boring. And now let's talk about some of the questions in the chat. Heisenberg. It's a good, there's a little Breaking Bad reference. Do you think the cost of building an ADU using a company will cost less in 5 years? That's a good question. So you're asking, like, there's some of these companies out there that offer to do your ADU from start to finish. And they can be a little pricey. Some of them also offer really ridiculously low prices, which I would proceed with caution if it seems too good to be true. I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of development in the market. Natural competition should drive prices in the right direction for consumers. It should make things more affordable. I don't recommend waiting. If there's an opportunity and you have access to the equity, then you've got kind of a unique window of opportunity. Like, new legislation can pass every year, right? So all of the abilities we have today, it's not guaranteed that they're going to be here in a year or 2 years. Local jurisdictions are also going to find new ways to get involved in the non-discretionary permitting process. So as a whole, for example, myself, I'm looking at building an ADU. I know it's expensive, but I am not waiting. I do not try to time the market, right? There's a unique opportunity to invest some of my money, some of my home equity into developing an ADU. I think on the long term, that's the right investment for me. And I will not wait, even though I think that things will move in the right direction. Now, what's right for you depends on you. Got to talk to a financial advisor, right? But like, you gotta weigh. If you have another investment opportunity, maybe pursue the other investment opportunity first. If this is your one shot, or this is your best shot, like invest now, unless you have a better thing to invest in. If that makes sense. Is it much more affordable to build an ADU by hiring contractors to do individual jobs rather than hiring a company that already has contractors to do everything for you? Okay. In the best case scenario, let's say you're a really experienced home builder, like you have personally gone through the home building process multiple times, then I think you would have the experience to affordably build an ADU by hiring subcontractors and acting as a general contractor yourself. I mean, you're not a licensed general contractor, you're an owner builder, but you're hiring licensed subcontractors to do the work. GCs have margin. They make money doing what they do, right? So by acting as an owner builder and hiring the licensed subs yourself, there is a profit margin there that you could recapture if you're experienced. If you're inexperienced, you really have a risk of making some pretty costly mistakes throughout the process that could erode at that margin that you're capturing, and they could even exceed it. You know, it's not unheard of for people to make some basic mistakes that end up costing them more in the long run. Now, just hands down, math-wise, hiring subs and acting as an owner builder, if you make no mistakes, costs less than hiring a GC. But if you make mistakes, yeah. And then also you're trading time, right? So it's more affordable in cash to hire subs, but it's less affordable in time. And so if you're a professional and you have the ability to do work that converts your time into money, then seriously consider, like, hey, how many hours am I going to have to spend finding a foundation specialist whereas a GC would just call it like their foundation guy or gal. And is it worth your time to try to develop that relationship for one build when you know that foundation specialist is going to always favor the GCs that they work with because they're a steady source of income and you're a one-off. So yeah, hope that answers the question. It's more affordable in theory. There's a lot of potential pitfalls, and you got to trade your time. And you're never going to be as important to the sub as a GC or a ready stream of work is. Yeah. All right. Another question from Heisenberg. Man, you're on a roll. Hector Castillo has a YouTube channel demonstrating how he hired contractors individually himself. He got quotes of $60,000 to $80,000 for a garage conversion from various companies. Yeah, so that's a great example. I love Hector's videos. He's a good example of a realtor, right? So he's in the business. And I think, he is demonstrating how you can hire contractors individually yourself. He's regularly in a lot of the ADU Facebook groups asking for contractors, like the same way anybody would. Just kind of like, hey, anybody got references? And I think if you watch his videos, you see stuff like where he hired a designer, which isn't a builder contractor, but it's somebody you contract work to. He hired a designer who tried to put the shear wall on the exterior of his garage, almost cost him over $10,000 because of that design mistake. And Hector caught it and saved $10,000 by putting the shear walls on the interior of the garage conversion. So he didn't have to remove all the stucco. Do you know how to catch all those mistakes? If you don't, you might spend $10,000, $14,000 extra because the designer made a mistake that you didn't know how to catch that a GC would have caught, right? So I think Hector's kind of a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Also, if you guys are Googling Hector, it's spelled with a K, and so you can find his channel that way. There's another Hector Castillo, and he's like a dating guru, so be careful about your spelling. You might get something very different. And the last question from Heisenberg is, if you hire subcontractors, do you think that you will have to spend a lot of time checking to see if they're actually doing their job? Well, that's a question that varies a lot, project to project. I know what's the best way to answer this. So if you have existing relationships with subs, then you should already have a certain amount of trust, right? And it's like any work relationship. You want good, competent people who you trust to be specialized and be more knowledgeable and experienced than you in the thing that they're doing. And that said, you still want to be able to lend your expertise to the project, right? And so in a great GC sub relationship, the GC trusts the sub to know even more than the GC does about their specific area, stay up to date, and to be really specialized. That said, the GC should have the overall picture of the job and be able to say, like, hey, I see how these 2 or 3 specialists working together, there's this problem that's about to occur, and the GC should see that ahead of time and be able to weigh in, or any variety of other kind of global project management tasks. As an owner builder, you're taking on that responsibility to see how the various pieces fit together. And so it's less that you're going to spend time. I mean, if you hire bad subs, you're going to spend a lot of time checking on their work. Or if you don't have a lot of trust in your subs, you're going to spend a lot of time checking on them. But more than that, even if you hire the best subs, they're specialized and focused on their tasks. And you have taken on the responsibility to oversee that all those pieces fit together. And so you should probably spend a lot of time, not necessarily checking what they're doing, but making sure that the project is going smoothly and timed correctly, and that all the pieces fit together. For videos about ADU financing, check this out. And for more videos about ADU resources, check this out. Thank you.